I'm Marcy Lundy, and on today's Cult of Kindness podcast, I am so honored to have Jan Schwartz, Ph.D. on. Jan, thank you, first of all, for coming on.
A warm hello to you, Marcy, and to all of your listeners. It's a joy to be with you.
Thank you. So, Jan, if you could tell the Cult of Kindness audience a little bit about yourself and what you do.
I am a forensic behavioral scientist, and I'm also president of a nonprofit, not-for-fee investigation firm that performs intelligence gathering efforts that work to help strengthen our country. But as I say that, I must also mention that that is not how my life began. That was not the first step, nor was it the goal of my career path at the time. But I was led into this work, and amazingly, it is the right fit.
Very good. Yes, just reading about what you've done in your life is absolutely incredible. I have to ask if early on you, as for season 5 of Cult of Kindness, our main topic is the empath, and what you're doing in your life is largely connected to that. And I want to know if early on in your life that you realized that you were able to connect with people's emotions on a level that was a bit more rich than others.
Yes, I have never thought of it in those terms, but I always felt that I was wired differently, and I wanted an extra closeness with everyone, and I wanted to protect our relationship of closeness, and I wanted to honor every part of their internal being. I grew up in an interesting environment because growing up in a suburb of Chicago, about 16 miles west, was a phenomenal place to grow up because it was very metropolitan. I could hop on a bus and take the L and go down to the Chicago Library to write a paper for high school English or whatever. And there was never the fear factor of, my goodness, this young girl going by herself. And what was going on at that time may be of interest to you. And it was a time where every Sunday I happened to notice on our living room coffee table where was the Chicago Tribune. And the cover photo was of Mayor Richard Daley, who was always accompanied by men who wore fedoras. And it was just an expected photo. And the stories there were always very affirmative. And you see, Mayor Daley was almost a mythical creature, a profoundly powerful man when we think of it in today's world, that he was so respected because he was able to somehow manage all of the demands and the pulls and tugs on him from all of these organized crime figures and families, and he was greatly respected for it, and it was a city that was considered safe. So I grew up at a time of everyone seeing this, reading the front page, but never talking about it. It was a taboo, but I was drawn to it. Isn't this interesting? So at least it is very interesting to me that I, as this very young child, was always looking at that Sunday paper like, what is he doing now? Isn't this fascinating? But at the same time, I went to an elementary school where I had the most incredibly loving, nurturing, smart, creative, stimulating teachers that only wanted the best from those of us in our small classroom. And it was a time where kindness and empathy and respect for one another was key. And that doesn't mean that people didn't tease and joke and pull pranks. Oh no, that's just human nature. But there was a different attitude and an enjoyment, because we were able at that time to enjoy these emotional strengths.
Mhm.
We weren't thinking constantly, okay, oh no, where's my purse? Who could possibly take it? Or
Yeah.
what can happen next? I've got to watch this. No, we were enjoying the development that had come from all of the other generations who had worked so hard. Okay.
Very good.
So imagine, yes, I went on to become an elementary teacher, and the love that they gave to me and the leadership skills that they gave to me, I just, I was so happy doing that, but life was pulling me forward. And I initially thought I would become a principal, and then that was not quite going to give me all of the answers to helping and nurturing that inner child that I saw that was struggling in the classroom. And
Mhm.
then I had this powerful dream that told me that I was to become a child and family psychologist. And that became my goal. And so I went on. And my postdoctoral internship then was, I chose to do it with criminal kids at a residential treatment facility. And so here I was blending together, bringing into this arena the love that I had experienced as a child, and nurturing these juvenile delinquents and really seriously troubled kids,
Mhm.
future Charles Mansons. Believe me, my colleagues threw the cases at me, and that was good, because I was able to test out all that I had been building and applying in my life. And
Mhm.
so when it was time for me to leave, it was very hard. It was the end of my internship, and I was relocating to Northeast Ohio to marry my husband. That's a wonderful thing. And I was so excited. I was so happy, thinking now I can open this private practice, something that I had longed for and had been so eager to do for so long. But
Mhm.
this is where life got really interesting,
Mhm.
because suddenly I was in a situation where at social events, people came up to me and they were telling me things, and I was, wow, that's really unusual. Why are they trusting me with all of these facts about powerful people that are within the area? And I thought maybe they were warning me, they were educating me, and everywhere I went, people were trusting me. And perhaps it was because I was an empath, and because I was. I had been trained to be a family psychologist, and so they thought they could be safe with me, which of course everything they shared was never shared with anyone else.
Mhm.
But it became something that was very different, that had never happened before in this area, where at events people were gathering to talk to me and waiting to talk to me. And so the power figures began to notice this. And so I began to experience very serious security incidents of great, they tried to run me off the road. They tried to chase me up the back staircase, and I thankfully grabbed my shoe and, was ready to protect myself. I have over 9 pages of very serious security incidents that have happened, but I knew something was definitely wrong when things got a little bit more unusual. And that was when I received a visit from a Fortune 500 company chairman of the board, his two sons, and a mafioso, and they interrogated me for 25 minutes. Now, when I share that with you, and you think back, as a young child, I was studying those pictures, studying the front page of the Chicago Tribune. How did I know? You know, those of us with this sensory field and this highly intuitive nature, do we know, moms and dads who might be listening, if you have a child that's fascinated with something, let them draw it in, because you see, I did not for 1 minute think of running or calling the police or doing anything. I just addressed them. I addressed the moment and stood up to them. And I say this with a smile. I'm so glad I had on a nice suit and, you know, my highest heels.
Yeah.
And I just stood there, my tallest 5'7" and I handled their questions. And it wasn't pleasant, but what it did was it redirected my energy from thinking about setting up more appointments to look at spaces for an office.
Mhm.
When here unusual things were happening, the realtor wouldn't show up or he had the wrong keys. And I started realizing something has shifted.
Okay.
Things are getting much more serious in this end. I really need to do something. Too many people have told me too much. I need to start pounding the pavement. And that was the moment where I shifted my whole focus to working to get to the bottom of it. And interestingly, what I found and what the number of people who helped me gather information, and all of this was done with the highest level of ethics, and there was no no deceptive situation ever. I always announced myself, what I wanted to do, and the number of people who wanted to help someone who was that direct, that honest,
Mm.
was phenomenal. And these were state agencies, these were federal authorities. Presenting a real self and the real story was an effective way to begin. So the information that I gathered was, interestingly, the documentation became very important to state and federal officials. And soon I was regularly delivering large numbers of boxes of data. So, you know, that was 32 years ago. And since then, there have been many visits and many projects that I have done for a large number of agencies, entities, federal authorities, and academic, and all kinds of projects that I have done with the helpfulness and the skilled level of professionals and state, federal, and local authorities who are resources to me
Sure.
as I do my work. So that's just a little bit of an introduction, but it has taken me in many directions and
Yes.
many moments to talk about.
Yes. Well, I think it's, thank you for sharing that. In reading about you, I know you said that as a child you were in all white schools, but that empathy and what you're describing, where people were in tune with you to the point where you became this gatekeeper of information, and people's level of trust was so high with you. When did you get to the point where you realized, okay, this is definitely a thing where people see this in me? Did you ever get to a point where you ever felt overwhelmed by this level of information on such a high level that you had within, or was it from childhood you always felt like you could possibly have this capability and it just continued as an adult?
There is the weight of the world on my shoulders.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like.
Yeah.
And I have been since a young girl. I grew up with, somehow I developed an overly responsible spirit.
Mhm.
And I really am glad that you mentioned about that I attended all white schools, because there's an important thing I want to also share, that back when I attended Proviso West High School, where I was given extraordinary leadership experiences, I had I grew up this was during the civil rights era.
Mhm.
And I had a unique opportunity to go to attend a weekend retreat called Project Improvement. And Proviso West High School was all white, but our sister high school, Proviso East, was primarily African American. At that time, we referred to it as Black. I still say the word African American. I'm not, I want to be very respectful, because it's a sensitive issue. But I intuitively uh, knew that there was an imbalance.
Mhm.
And even though there was so much good about growing up at that time, I could feel the injustice.
Mhm.
And this was something that many people around my age were speaking out about, that we're all God's children. We're all the same. And I had a chance to step into a moment where I hopefully was able to impact some media perspective at that time. And I'll briefly sketch it for you, if I may.
Yes.
But the weekend retreat was just described as we're going to a college campus. The students will be from Proviso East, the Black African American children, kids, high school students, and Proviso West students. Everyone would have their own room, and they would be doing project improvement activities. Okay. My parents received a phone call from the principal, and they knew him. So they said yes. Never could they have imagined the unique situations that I would be stepping into. But I was prepared as an empath and as an intuitive. I sensed my alert system was very keenly on. And
Mhm.
one of the first activities we did is we broke into sensitivity training groups. And then they said, okay, you're going to be going on a tour of the campus, and someone's going to be leading you. And we were in these contraptions that they were going to be led through. So we weren't just necessarily all standing, being walked around, but one was blindfolded and the other was not. So I chose to be blindfolded firsthand, because you see, this was my chance. I
Mhm.
wanted to show that there was every reason to have courage and to not be stepping into the zone of fear just because someone's skin tone was
Mhm.
different than mine. So I can remember the moment where we were paired together, and I volunteered to be the one. And of course, it was my turn at one point to lead, but there were many activities like this where we were brought in and we were put into tests of how scared were you? How can we make this more frightening for you?
Mhm.
What can and it wasn't. It was something that I realized we were doing a progression of activities. And then, of course, there was the follow up. And so those who were participants, and there weren't too many of us, but we had to face the psychologists who had created this this weekend retreat to gain information and insights. And I watched how they did the interviewing, and I could see that they had a plan, they had a bias. And so when they came to me, I'm a student of life, an empath who once, like all of you listening, and like you, Marcy, who wants to stand up for truth,
Yeah.
I just said to them, no, I didn't feel that way at all. No, that wasn't my, we actually got to be friends, I was explaining, and we were able to trust each other. So every one of their tactics that had been created to try to create, had been created to try to draw out in me and the participants, worry, fear, perhaps a spirit of like, this is too dangerous, something like that. I didn't even get near it. In fact, I crafted, key moments of the scenario of saying, I'm so happy to tell you that. And oh, no, thankfully, that never once occurred to me. Rather, we did this. And so I was watching their reaction to me. And this was a time where, people had very long hairs, men had very long hair. And so the psychologists were a product of their own perspective. And it was a moment where I felt like I shook things up.
Oh, yeah.
And I never forgot that. And I also remember that I planned out my responses and I wasn't disappointed by the results. And so that helped me many years later when I was in situations where I was reporting information that was going to be very disappointing to someone or to very sensitive information. And I've learned to do to speak in ways that are hopefully a tone of respect and mutual love for, say, the institution, for the person's life path or whatever, and never in a tone of hate and vitriol. Always with, okay, it's my great, I have collected these facts and documentation, and I need to share these with you because they may be of interest. So always with a collaborative spirit of wanting to better, wanting to bring in the power of good.
Yeah.
So we can, we're born with these things, I think, and I had the situations in life that were leading me. Look at those teachers that planted that. Look at the simple Chicago Tribune. Look at the opportunity to be in project improvement in Chicago, the Chicago area, and then to have the chance to tell you about it.
Yeah.
So thank you for mentioning that. And we have these moments that continue to knock on our hearts that we need to be ready for.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And then when they happen, stop what you're doing
Yeah.
and realize, okay, try to measure up. This is a chance. This is a chance.
I was just thinking how wonderful it was that you were a teacher because you were able to one, show the students that, and I'm sure you had the capability to see what you possessed inside of the students that were that way. And that just sends so many wonderful people into the world. As they grow up, they will already be in tune with that part of themselves.
You are the kindest speaking person, and I thank you for all of your insights on that. My brother recently sent me some photos that he found in a box that, in clearing out a family home member's home, and he said, Jan, here's what your classroom looked like. Do you remember this? And so here you are talking to me about this, and amazingly, Marcy, that's many years ago. And I looked, and here beside me were kids whose names I still remembered. And their little love notes to me were on my desk. So precious, precious moments. And they are all sponges. And they taught me how they wanted to be talked to so that they would be able to thrive. So every single job I've had, every single position I've had, I have been also a sponge where I'm learning and absorbing and I feel more filled inside,
Yeah.
and more nurtured, having had those moments.
Mm. Yeah, you are absolutely a student of life, to take each experience and carry it into your next act.
When you mentioned about what were there times where I realized there was something, there were conversations that I had with people that made me realize that maybe there was something I was doing, that a personal philosophy was developing or a personal style was developing.
Mm.
And one time was when I was experiencing my exit interview at the residential treatment facility with my supervisor. She happened to say, what was it that you feel that you did with the criminal kids and their families that impacted them so greatly? And I responded with, well, I truly loved those kids and their families. And she smiled, but her eyes and face indicated, "Hmm, there's more to it." Okay. And what I remembered was her face looking at me and saying, "You don't realize the whole picture, Jan, of
Mm.
what they weren't just responding to your love." And I thought about that because, Marcy, one of the things in life that I learned from those wonderful teachers that I told you about was an awareness of the perspectives that we have, each one of us can have regarding a situation, where we can say, okay, well, this is how I see it, but we have to realize that's not the whole picture. It's how is the person across the way perceiving it, and how is the institution who's receiving the information interpreting it, or what is their perspective on it. And that is something that is absolutely critical for us. It's something that develops as we work on our emotional intelligence, where we start realizing it isn't just how I see it, it's how someone else sees it. And this was one of those moments where I thought, I wonder what else she's referring to. But I was aware that there was more that I needed to learn about myself.
Mm.
So the second moment that I keenly recall came a few years later during a conversation with some federal agents. And they asked me, Jan, how is it that you do your projects? Because why is it that every project you bring to us turns into a case?
Wow.
And I looked at them. Now, at this point, we were buddies, okay? I may have been the blonde in heels, okay? They may have been in there, but I was the lady who delivered documentation, and I may have looked aside as I was bringing all of this to them with this heart that wanted to protect the
Mm.
power of good. Protect is the word, as life has changed, we need to protect good. But I just looked at them and smiled and said, well, hey guys, I have eyes that see. I have a sixth sense, because by then I had learned about myself that I could be in a room and I would see so much more happening than most people. And maybe it was because I wanted to, or maybe it was because my sensory field was saying, okay, all right, in order to feel safe, I was imprinted from a young girl on to take it all in and to protect good. Okay. But the third conversation came when I was promoting my first book last summer with Oscar. And this was a very difficult book to write because it detailed the joys and the sorrows of our golden retriever's discovery of his own cure for his cancer.
Mm.
So to cheer myself, I, like perhaps you are the same, I had to do something creative and I would do some of the writing for that, but then I would have to do something fun and joyful. So I
Yes.
began writing these tips. At the time, I was calling it How to Tap into Your Creative Genius. And I would post these on Facebook. And to my great surprise, that no matter how different my friends might be, they were responding to these tips. And so it was kind of like when I would be going around in the community or when I would be checking my messages, there would be a comment about it. And it was a way of building friendships. And I loved it. And so when I was having coffee with one of my local Facebook friends, and he had been a former Associated Press bureau chief of a major U.S. city, and he said to me, "Where are these ideas coming from?"
Right.
And I was very surprised this time at the words that came out, and what I said was this: Dan, imagine three interrelated circles. The top left represents mental intelligence or IQ.
Mm.
The second to the right represents emotional intelligence or EQ. And below it is a circle representing spiritual intelligence or SQ. The area common to all three circles is where I find my knowing. And
Mm.
he said, write that down.
Yeah.
That is your next book. So when I was calling my creative genius or and encouraging everybody to tap into theirs and calling it my knowing, I now am referring to as authentic intelligence is that, and that's my newest writing project, my newest book that will be shortly down the road, able to talk a little bit more about. But it's amazing, and maybe you've had the same experiences with your life, that people can further the steps in your decisions because of the kindnesses that they share in their reactions. You too have had that.
Absolutely. Yeah. As you were talking, I was just thinking about the current state of the US, and
Yes.
so many women feel so lost and without hope at this point. And just hearing you talk, it made me think of how this is a time for women, if they're able to tap into that emotional intelligence, and it's there. Don't give up hope. And it's one of the reasons I'm so excited that you're writing a book about this, because people are wanting to give up, that we need their voices. They're wanting to give up, and we need them more than ever. And so for someone to be able to take this time instead of giving up to tap in,
Yeah.
I it's so important. And I just hope that people listening to you will try and understand that a lot of people are afraid of that
Yeah.
themselves. But this is where you will not only be the strength for yourself, but for so many that need it right now.
Oh, Marcy, thank you for saying that. And I do want to leave something with you all, because you see, what I have realized as I look over the change of interests of people from when I grew up, we wanted to be close. We wanted to have really close girlfriends. We weren't competing with each other for the best nails or the best shoes or purse. We were we would walk miles to just see each other, and to connect and to have an hour to have a piece of candy together at the or an ice cream cone or share some French fries. So it was a time where we celebrated what was the feeling, the good feelings that can come from closeness. And so I want everyone to understand that we don't need to buy anything to get there. We just need to consider this concept of feeding our intelligences. If we, as authentic human beings, are going to be exposed to artificial intelligence, we're going to be pulled into this world that's more and more and more in the opposite direction. We have to say, wait a minute, we were not wired to be artificial. That the wiring we were given at birth to thrive is what we need to use in every day and in every way. And so, how we can do that is understand that there is great enjoyment in feeding our mental intelligence. There's many ways to do that. Feeding our emotional intelligence. My goodness, we have phenomenal ways to do that. There's so many activities and authors that have helped us understand about building self-awareness, about learning to manage our impulses, and whether we can talk ourselves out of being angry or delaying gratification, and instead of having an immediate reward, about how we can motivate ourselves or motivate others. Don't we all love to be around someone who looks at us and says, I see you being someone with a special gift that can go only one way, and that's up. Okay, that is the message that I want to say to you and to every one of your listeners is the secret is they just have to discover the fun and enjoyment of feeding their intelligences. And I know that your recent episode about empathy and Dr. Reese's wonderful, wonderful work there. Well, empathy, the ability to relate and care, there are so many ways that we can increase our empathy. First of all, by understanding the different perspectives that everyone may have, and on the weekend retreats and things like that that you were talking about, it's during those times of connectedness that we realize, wait a minute, she had a different perspective about that incident in the office than I did. And all of these things feed into our growing skills in being empaths or in being empathic, authentic human beings. See, so it is an exciting time, even though there is the spread of darkness, but love does not run when darkness comes in. No, no, no. We stay, we hold firm, and we commit to going the full distance. And so I share that with you, that instead of a society that is encouraging us to feed our egos and to think that, oh, our merit depends upon how many likes we got for the day or for our post, or did someone notice the purse I'm carrying, or that I was wearing a new blouse from whatever, that okay, those are moments.
Yeah.
But the long lasting impact that's going to take you really up is when you feed the intelligences and the spiritual intelligence, of course, which is an underpinning of spirituality and not just being a religious person. You can be a religious person and also a spiritual person, but you can be a spiritual person and not be religious. It's a complicated intelligence, but most importantly is just knowing that every day We need to feed our soul. We need to feed our emotional intelligence. We need to be able to practice how we read others and read ourselves. So our minds. We say, well, I'm really good at GPS. Okay, that was a skill. A few years ago when that came out and everyone was intimidated by the technology. And okay, we got that to work in our car. We got that to work in our phones. Okay, that's mental intelligence. And yes, it's time to look at our calendar to see who we send birthday cards to. Yes, that's our mental intelligence. But we need to keep realizing that every day we need to do all three. And here's why. Because as authentic human beings, we know there are going to be moments that are going to come up that are going to be big tests. It's going to require courage. It's going to require perseverance. It's going to require an energy that we never thought we had in us. And so what we're going to have to tap into is going to come out of us, and that's our fourth intelligence. That is the authentic intelligence, the fourth intelligence that results in the convergence of those three interrelated circles, the area common to all three, and that is our source of wisdom. That's our source of knowing. That's our creative genius, and that is our source of hope, of knowing that we can begin anew, no matter what we have been through, no matter what we have yet to go through.
Right.
We can do it.
No matter what. Well, Jan, you are such a gift. I would be honored if you would come back on later to share more insights with the audience. I know that they will eat this up and want more.
Oh, you are the kindest lady, and I am overjoyed to say yes. I would be honored to be with you again, and we'll talk more and share more and keep spreading hope.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much for your words, and thank you so much for being on. I'm sure the audience will receive you with open arms. Thank you.
I'm grateful.
All right, everyone. Take care. And take care, Jen.
Take care, Marcy.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.